All right. Thanks so much for having me, Arlen. I hope that we all walk away with something. For me, it might be trauma. And for those of you that are here, hopefully something helpful that you can take back to the schools and maybe prevent trauma in the future related to social media and AI use. We'll just use the chat function here. I'd love to hear from everyone, like what is one thing you carry with you everywhere? From the moment you wake up, when you leave your house, maybe get on the car, public transit, store, school meetings, bathroom. Don't be shy. I think that I've heard some stuff about things that are dirtier than a toilet bowl. A Diet Coke. Someone takes a Diet Coke everywhere they go with them. That's really helpful. Coffee. Yes, I think an IV with coffee going straight to the blood system is really needed for educators today. Oh, wow. Eyeglasses. Yeah. Chapstick, especially during the winter. Awesome. Well, I would say that 99% of school principals say the Illinois Performance Standards for School Leaders, also known as the Holy Grail for principalship. So if that wasn't your answer, I don't know what you're doing at your school, and I worry for all of those children. I'm just kidding. Um, all right. I don't even know how people are responding to this because it's just me looking at me. So I'm just kidding. I am guessing phone was a very common answer for a lot of people. I don't know if anyone's seen K-pop Demon Hunter, but this is a reference to that. Also has great social media references. So it's not just the kids. Most of us, based on your responses as well, are carrying devices almost everywhere we go, and they've shaped our routines, our attention, and our relationships. I think I mentioned about the bathroom. There's a study that showed the screen of a phone is actually dirtier than the inside of a toilet bowl. So if you haven't cleaned your phone screen in a while, this might be the universe telling you today is a good day. So phones have become indispensable to our lives. And if we struggle to manage our devices, imagine being 13 years old and never having known a life without them. And those are children today. This isn't going to be a session about demonizing technology. It's really about teaching students and ourselves to use it with intention instead of being used by it. That's why this work has to start with understanding how technology shapes students' mindsets, because that ultimately is what shapes behaviors. So, my name is Jane. I founded KindEd, which is a social media and AI literacy program, after being a former Chicago public school teacher. I started this work after watching how devices and social media impacted my students' learning and their relationships. We're going to look at how tech shapes them today and how literacy around both devices and beyond can really help us change this. So I started teaching in 2014, and all of us in education wear many hats. I'm just going to share a couple of my formal ones. So again, I started as a middle school special education teacher, and my focus was originally on how to make learning accessible. I later taught social studies, which was all about critically evaluating events and sourcing, which has become much more challenging in today's world with generative AI. Ultimately, while I tried to help kids how to figure out, why a historical artifact was created, who created it, and maybe what their motives or incentives were, I ended up having to use those skills myself when I tried to get the bottom of student conflict. I don't know how many of you have had to exercise your sourcing skills dealing with school related conflict. Um, I was unfortunately also a phone policy enforcer. I inherited that role when I came in. I didn't expect it, but we had a restrictive phone policy, and I did a lot of triage on student conflicts. I later became a case manager, and that same year, COVID hit. So it was a really interesting time to go into that role. And I am now parent to a 6, almost 7 year old. He's actually 6, almost 7. 6, 7. All right. Arlen, I think people are probably going to start leaving the session. So it's been over 10 years. And what's been made clear today is that tech made every one of my roles harder because it's simply not a tool or a distraction problem. It's emotional, social, and behavioral. We, all of us, principals, teachers, parents, we weren't trained for this, but we are having to manage the problems. During this decade, I used several different products from social emotional learning to digital citizenship and strategies to support students' social emotional needs, as well as school culture. From Second Step, Calm Classroom, I used positive behavioral intervention systems, Common Sense Media, Class Dojo, and device monitoring tools like GoGuardian. I don't know if anyone has used things like Securely. A principal once shared with me that I think Securely is the one where it monitors what kids are entering into school issued devices. And one time in a social studies class, they were studying one of the world wars, and all the kids started typing and looking up bombs. That was not a good day for that principal. And the good news is they have since then made some updates on how they handle social studies lessons. So many of the tools that I shared with you, they continue to be used today. It is estimated that in 2017, US K-12 schools were spending anywhere from 20 to 47 billion dollars cumulatively on social emotional learning, and spending has only multiplied since, and screen use and mental health issues have soared. In 2021-22, spending exceeded approximately 1.7 billion. Oh, Mia, that's great. I'd love to hear what tools you use and how effective they've been. If anyone would like to share in the chat. So this session is really going to connect Illinois professional standards for school leaders to students' digital challenges, because if social media is shaping how kids think, feel, and relate to one another, then that is more than just a tech issue. So by the end of our session, my goal is to hopefully show how phone, social media, ed tech, and AI are shaping student focus and behavior, identify root causes of digital challenges rather than just managing the symptoms, and share aligned tools that can center student voice and help you support both your staff, students, and families with digital self-awareness. So my first point is that we have this old system for digital immigrants that we're still using for digital natives. Back in 2001, someone by the name of Mark Prensky, he wrote a book and he described two different groups of people, digital immigrants and digital natives. Would love to hear whether you identify as a digital immigrant, native, maybe both. But digital immigrants, they learn technology later and they still carry their pre-digital habits, preferring step-by-step learning and one task at a time. Whereas digital natives, our students and possibly ourselves, we're growing up surrounded by screens. And so they think visually, they learn interactively, and they expect instant feedback. The problem is school systems were not designed for were designed for digital immigrants, not digital natives, and they rewarded patience, memorization, and delayed gratification. These are all things that today's technology has rewired. And it is not to say that those things aren't still valuable and much needed skills today. I think the contrary is true. We still need to exercise these skills because they have well known and well researched positive outcomes in later life. All while schools have adopted ed tech to modernize learning, we didn't stop to ask how it was shaping cognition, motivation, and relationships. And more importantly, who is making these tools and why? So, what happened when our old system met these new learners? We gave every student a screen. The goal was great: access, equity, student engagement. But what we built is a screen first learning environment. Students are spending more time typing and texting than talking. They spend more time clicking than actually making human connections, which means less eye contact, weaker relationships, and more students who feel alone even when surrounded by people. I don't know if anyone's had that experience where you get to an elevator or a bus stop or some other public space and you look around you and everyone is on a screen. I once got in an elevator with one other person and I was gonna say good morning. And as soon as they saw me, they took out their phone. That hurt my feelings just a little bit. So we see the results of this. Students who can't focus for long stretches. Teachers will say they have short attention spans. Counselors say they're constantly comparing themselves to others. It's not that kids don't care about learning, it's that they're overwhelmed. Technology gives students constant input, but no space to process or reflect. It's reflected in the academic outcomes, decades of national decline in literacy, math, and science. Now we know 80% of all learning is visual, and literacy is the foundation of learning. And text is still visual info presented, but oftentimes those fine motor and gross motor skills of literacy are done on paper and paper-based learning has shown to have better outcomes than a screen-first environment. And so, how do we reconcile these two issues that we're seeing in terms of how students would like to learn and what actually works? So again, we're seeing national declines in reading and math scores across age groups, even as ed tech spending has tripled, which started before the pandemic. So what we're seeing, diminished ability to concentrate, higher anxiety. This isn't a tech problem. This is a behavioral health problem that affects students' ability to learn, and data confirms the impact. So if access isn't the issue anymore, what is? Which is going to bring us to the next part of how students are using these tools and how that use affects their mind and relationships. We have two divides: digital access and digital use. For years, the conversation around technology in schools has been about access. Do students have devices? Do they have the internet? We've since closed that gap, mostly expedited by COVID, and opened a new one. So rather than access, we've run into an issue of use. Students have all the tools, but lacking the skills or judgment to use them well. This is where capability comes in. Not who has technology, but who understands it and stays in control of it. So, this reality of two digital divides of connectivity, who can get online, and capability of who can use technology intentionally, social media and AI literacy will live in that second divide. And it helps students understand what they see, how algorithms work, and how their own behavior shapes what shows up on their screens. My third point: engagement technology encourages instant gratification and systems that keep us scrolling. And I'm hearing in the comments about how students are missing those important soft skills, sensory overload, and a lack of fine motor skills and speech issues. Short videos that we're seeing, streaks, likes, and notifications, every one of these features is designed to reward users with quick hits of dopamine. And over time, this conditions the brain for instant gratification. Students start to expect constant stimulation and quick answers, making it hard to persist through longer, more demanding tasks. Not to mention, how do educators compete with something that makes them feel good? In schools, this shows up as impatience, frustration, and anxiety among our learners. And then our work as educator becomes helping them recognize when that urge kicks in and how to pause before reacting. When students can't delay gratification, they'll struggle with self regulation both online and in real life. There was the marshmallow study that happened decades ago that showed they did it with kindergarteners. And what they did was they gave a kindergartner a marshmallow and they told them, if you wait 5 minutes and don't eat this one, or some amount of time, that they would give them two later. And they followed these children into adulthood and found that the children that were able to wait, delay that gratification for more marshmallows, had better outcomes in later life. And it was so significant that it was even better financial outcomes. I don't know if this is relatable for those of you that are on the call, but when we think about instant gratification, it's really not just the kids. I don't know who sat in a meeting, maybe like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, you sat in a meeting, you could pay attention, an hour didn't feel that bad or that long. But these days, meetings seem a lot less, engaging. They feel like they take forever. So social media feeds emotional dysregulation. When students are stressed, they turn to their phones and screens, and scrolling feels like a way to escape, but it rarely helps. Instead, it's going to fuel comparison and self doubt. A school counselor shared with me about how oftentimes children are coming to her just in emotional distress, and she's having to repeat herself, telling kids, you cannot be measuring your whole to someone else's part, given that most content creators online are showing either only a part of themselves, and that may or may not even be authentic to who they really are. Regardless, the more children scroll, the worse they feel, but they can't stop. And we see that impact every day in mood swings, irritability, social withdrawal. The solution isn't to shame them for it, but to help them notice it, because awareness is the first step towards regulation. And so we have to also ask ourselves, what do we hope to feel when we reach for our phone? And that reflection builds emotional intelligence. Anybody else delete their, or anybody else familiar with this graphic or has found themselves on their AirPods with an Apple Watch, on a tablet with their laptop and a TV in the back. And then on the right side, it's a little joke about how, in general, the internet, we've seen this new phenomenon of like cancel culture and things as small as, comparing like or having an opinion on one thing becomes deeply upsetting when people don't consider all the other things. And how we can see that would quickly age poorly when it comes to civic engagement and how we have to make decisions as a community and build consensus. So my next point is that AI increases cognitive offloading. So technology makes life seemingly easier, but it's also making thinking optional. We are often offloading these cognitive tasks to devices, whether it's a reminder, a calculator, or AI. I remember someone once telling me a huge technological innovation, and they held up a pencil and thinking about how even that led to a level of cognitive offloading. You leave the house and you didn't have writing, you had to remember what you needed. And then with the invention of the pencil, we could start, writing and remembering things. But now our notes are on our phones. If we're calculating, it's on our phones. If we're storing contacts, anybody remember their home phone number? Anyone old enough to? I remember mine. I should probably not say it out loud, but at the same time, it's disconnected. So 703-642-0066. Anybody else? Now these kids, they don't know how to contact anyone for anything. It's a problem. So the danger of this, so we now offload cognitive tasks to devices, and the danger is that we start to depend on technology to think for us. Students are losing confidence in their ability to problem solve or recall information. AI tools like ChatGPT and Magic School, they're powerful. But when students rely on them too early, they can skip learning processes, imagination, and creativity, sometimes entirely. So our job is to teach balance, using technology to enhance thinking and not replace it. A software engineer who had 20 years of experience, he used an AI tool to code a product that he was trying to build. And I don't have the research and I can look for it and share it because don't take me at my word. But he showed the power of these tools and how they do actually diminish critical thinking and cognitive um, capabilities because he built a code using AI, and when it ran into a bug, he tried to go and fix it, but he couldn't fix it because he didn't understand and make the code himself. So that's just like a little bit of an example of the dangers of someone who has fully developed, grew up without these technologies, knows how to code, is an expert at it, and found that it could debilitate his own ability to go back and fix a product. So when I ask students how often they use AI to help them think, they are often laughing and saying all the time or not at all, wink, wink. But the concern isn't that they use it, it's that they stop questioning it or never questioned it to begin with. If they never practice reflection, they lose metacognition, which is the ability to think about their own thinking. This is an image just to show the power of these tools, but also how redundant they are and maybe not how not so powerful they are. So if I had to tell you about how ChatGPT and all these other generative AI products respond, they're using a large language model of database to try and spit out what people can find online. So when we think about the risks, I was telling a room full of people, you could probably tell me these yourself. So do we really need it? And then I went ahead and prompted ChatGPT just to show that it is redundant and it's not necessarily an expert relative to ourselves and our own lived experiences. I don't know if anyone saw this, but on YouTube, it was a big deal, the Italian brain rot animals, because this is going to save the world. So every major platform from TikTok to YouTube to AI systems, they're using what psychologists call cognitive heuristics. These are the brain's shortcuts and our psychological tendencies towards things like familiarity bias, confirmation bias, and social proof. When you see people or students copy or mimic actions of others, particularly in uncertain situations, this is also known as social influence or social proof. And we have to think about viral trends as a good example of how that works. If you've ever seen like a horde of people just running in one direction and you're not sure what's coming in the other direction and you just start joining them and running with them, that's the kind of like psychological tendency they're hijacking. So these shortcuts, they help us make decisions quickly, but tech companies are designing around them to keep us engaged. And that's why our feeds feel just right. They're built to align with our instincts. And students need to understand this because this awareness can restore their agency, which is the belief that they are in control of their thoughts and behaviors. So when they realize, oh, this app makes me want to stay here, then they can start to question, and that's where the power starts to regain our agency. My next point is that these technology tools are replacing intrinsic motivation with external rewards. Gamification is everywhere: badges, leaderboards, likes, and it's making learning or social media feel rewarding, but that reward is external. Over time, it erodes intrinsic motivation, and students stop asking, like, what am I learning? And start asking, what do I get? Now, it's a good thing to have a balance of both. When we watch children grow from young age into adulthood, oftentimes, you got to bribe them. But over time, we take it away. And so, in the school setting, when we have children who have behavioral or academic challenges, we use the ABCs, right? What was the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence to try and figure out some sort of plan or behavior plan or academic plan to change those behaviors. And we might start off with, a sticker chart, small rewards, a treasure chest, but later on we move to verbal praise and trying to make children feel good about themselves. Social media and AI literacy can flip this, and it can help kids rediscover curiosity, growth mindsets, and purpose, and motivation that lasts longer than any like or streak. So, how big is the scale of the problem that we are seeing with engagement technology, smartphones, AI? The average teen is spending 50 to 60 hours a week on screens outside of the school day. So schools are doing a great job of trying to, restrict, ban, monitor device use, but it doesn't matter. And the issue is that this massive use outside of school, it comes in, impacting them from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. Meanwhile, American families spend a little over 6 hours of quality time per week. This number has remained consistent and somewhat declining since 2018. So children spend 9 times more time exposed to online influences. These numbers are sobering. In 2024, 1 out of 10 kids reported having thoughts of suicide or having tried to commit suicide. 700,000 adolescents attempted. To put it in perspective, the number 2 killer of children in the country is gun violence and gun shootings. And in, uh-oh, did I do this correctly? Sorry. So what we found was that children are 3,000 times more likely to attempt suicide than be hurt in a school shooting. Just to go back, the trend goes upwards. Incidences of gunfire in school grounds have increased, and we're hitting record levels again this year. But even with that, because the mental health crises can put it into perspective, children are 3,000 times more likely to attempt suicide than be hurt in a school shooting. And so we have to recognize that digital wellness is a school safety issue. Are the kids going to be okay? It's weird. No one responds, so I don't know if anyone's getting the jokes. This is the end. I think we're doomed. Just kidding. We have schools and we have you. So we're definitely not doomed. Principals, school leaders, assemble. You are ready to teach regulation, reflection, and relationships. And social media and AI literacy is those same skills just applied to their digital life. Screen use is a social determinant of health, both for individuals, individual students, and the communities. And it's impacting everything from their relationships and life outcomes. And it is necessary to shape healthy mindsets and behaviors for schools, school culture, life, success, and community health. And we can change our digital diets. And sometimes we can also just improve our wellness by going outside and seeing a cat laying in grass. Okay, maybe not. Maybe for some of us. I'm a dog owner, but cats are cute. So phone restrictions are necessary, and kids are using them at home. So at the very least, we can keep them off of it at school. Oh, yep. I once had 3 dogs too. I mean, I didn't get rid of them. They left. So I want to talk about the reason that phone restrictions and bans are necessary. In 2003, a man by the name of BJ Fogg, he created this new theory about persuasive technology design. And if you learn about persuasive technology design, it's kind of crazy how much it is similar to the same behavioral methods that schools use to try and help children engage with the ABCs. And he said that in order to trigger a behavior, you simultaneously need to make sure that someone has the motivation to do an action, the ability to do it, and a trigger. He created the infamous Facebook class in 2007, where he had students design apps and they were able to get millions of users. And at the time, he said you could walk into gold. Was it effective? And I don't remember when the stat is from, it might be from last year, but the average American now checks their phone 200 times a day. Imagine parenting, imagine having any sort of job, because this is, industry agnostic, and think about parents. So we're all kind of living in a permanently semi-distracted state. The research is clear. In 2016, they showed that the mere presence of a device can lower the quality of in-person interactions. So imagine that time you went to dinner and you had your phone out on the table, even if it was face side down, just it being there is a distraction and you kind of feel your mind split. I don't know if anyone's ever eaten with someone who's on their phone all the time. And on the right side, it says not a single phone in sight, just two people living in the moment. They're wearing VR goggles. Um, so another study in 2020 showed that it reduces memory and problem solving by having a phone nearby during testing. And they did this on college students who performed worse with the phone just being visible. No phones at dinner. That's a good idea. No phones at the table, definitely. Um, this was just funny. I don't know if this is true, but apparently a student smuggled their phone into the exam, and when they got caught, they were just looking at the memes instead of chatting, or instead of cheating. And so they, you know, when it comes to being on your phone during an exam, you have to have standards. And then most recently, in 2023, research showed that having a phone around just lowers baseline attention when you need to think, even when it's off. And that's not just for children, that's for everyone. So, yes, boundaries help, and rules alone will not change these habits. And boundaries will set the structure, but instruction and education can really change the behavior, which is going to take me to the second solution after phone bans and restrictions. If you're doing them, great job. I spoke with someone earlier who talked about how just getting rid of them, the kids started to enjoy talking with each other more. And so now they self-select into more conversation and not being on their screens during transition periods, during lunch, during recesses. So the magic of schools. Schools are where belonging happens and the real connection protects mental health. There was this fallacy that went around saying that during the pandemic and the learning loss that happened, they were blaming schools. But really, they assigned the blame inappropriately. It wasn't that schools aren't doing their jobs, it just showed that being in a school has benefits that learning online just cannot replicate. Literacy, especially on social media and AI, can help preserve those connections if done well. More than half of American families are also reporting getting their news from social media platforms instead of TV shows instead of news sites and apps, which has been stable over the last few years. So we have an opportunity in schools to really help children understand algorithmic mechanisms, incentives, and systems behind this machinery that is not just impacting them, but also impacting them through how their families engage in device use and how they get their information today. It's more about reactivity and less about information. On the left and right side, there are these two different systems thinking models. On the left side, it's the data, it's the data monetization of companies. It's a toy model. It's simplified to show how companies are interacting with the user of what looks like a free product or service to go then to a partner or within themselves to sell data so that they can either, do more targeted ads and so on. On the other side is just an ecosystem of how schools interact to try and produce their outcomes. So I'm going to go through the next couple of slides, and I'd love to for you to think about which side represents a tech ecosystem and which represents a school ecosystem or environment. Because ultimately, both environments are designed to shape mindsets and behaviors. So, which environment do you think lends itself to more passivity versus more activity? More mindless engagement, more intentional engagement, more about information or more about being informed, and more about being critical and more about being a critical thinker. And so it's not to say that necessarily all school environments are perfectly operating where children are able to constantly be active, intentional, informed, and critical thinking, but that's always the goal. Whereas we know that the end mean of engagement technology is user engagement and retention, and therefore they need users to engage in passive, mindless use. And we are ending up with a generation of critics and not a generation of critical thinkers. So, agency is this belief that you are in control of your thoughts and actions. And in order to get passive, mindless use of technology, you need to take that from a user. And today's engagement technology does just that. It creates low agency, and users are hooked into long periods of mindless screen use and impulsive habits. Children are being rewired into harmful digital habits. The good news is that we can change habits and grow agency, whether it's with social media, device, AI use. And with high agency, students will feel more in control, reducing impulsive behaviors that can both safeguard and improve mental health. We have to consider the role of systems thinking in order to make that possible and to position us well. When we think about the research and the most recent news reports coming about how these companies have long known the age of their users and the harm that it's been doing, they have built these off of algorithms and systems, and it's operating as intended in the same way schools create systems, whether it's within the classroom or an entire school setting, to improve things like behaviors, attendance, and grades. And since they use systems thinking to put users, including children, right where they want it, we have to think about how can we replace these behaviors because you can't unlearn something once it's learned. So children who are really dealing with issues of addiction with screen use, they will, for the rest of their life, really deal with constantly being in a rehabilitative state. And I love what someone had shared about the screen use. They said about detox that takes approximately 2 weeks to be complete. I don't know if anyone else has tried, like if you are really in the habit of doing something and you try to wean yourself or limit or restrict yourself versus just cutting it off completely, they have also found in studies that a complete detox is more effective at reducing use versus like trying to minimize yourself. I have been definitely guilty of setting limits and clicking that like give me 5 more minutes and then like ignore it for the day. Leslie shared that she's so tired of social media, she and parenting with it, and took it away from her teens. She said that they text talk in a couple of games, and it took a week, but they are both happier. And she's they probably do sneak on their accounts on other people's devices, but I think that's a really great method. And sometimes, people have said that the kids really want us to take it away. So, social media and AI literacy, it's long overdue and already aligned to the work you do, and it directly supports the Illinois leadership standards. They strengthen your mission and results by building student agency and well-being. They support systems change by addressing the root causes of distraction and online conflict. They improve teaching and learning by building focus, critical thinking, and responsible use of technologies. They enhance collaboration with families around digital behavior, which has also been problematic between administrators and the families. It has become a pain point, and it's reinforcing ethical conduct and strengthening a culture of self awareness and high expectations. So, this work is central to leading schools today. So, how do we actually do this? Phone bans can help reduce distraction, but social media and AI literacy can help students understand what drives their impulses, recognize manipulation, and regain control of their attention when they understand the why behavior change follows. We can't just enforce rules and have them without them fully understanding why they exist and buying in. The root issue of these technologies that we're dealing with is disconnection from ourselves and from others, and from understanding how tech design shapes experiences, emotion, and behavior. Um, you are the bridge to proactive tier one strategies that can focus on awareness and regulation. And this is the prevention work students actually need. Reactive policies bans, blocks, punishments, they have their limitations, and at times they can do more harm than actually deter. In my own experience with the phone policy, I realized when there were students who didn't turn in their phones, these were likely the students had the strongest attachments, and taking it away, I mean, some of the reactions that I would see from children who had a device taken away, um, I've now heard that from children as young as 5 who get their tablets taken away in school will resort to tantrums and physical aggression simply because they don't know how to be without it from years of unrestricted, unlimited use. So, with this root issue being disconnection, literacy can build proactive awareness and prevention in a way that not only strengthens relationships for off online spaces, but also for offline spaces. Because when we think through the lens of systems thinking, they're connected. And you're often dealing with issues that come from the home environment into the school or the online environment into the offline environment at home and at school. How do we define social media and AI literacy? I've been throwing this word around, but the truth is, this is a new area and a core skill and competency that we need to co create. And it will require a lot of asking questions. And that's how we not only can future proof how we educate kids on these topics, but also how we ourselves challenge one another on what we need to do that is more reflective of community needs. So I'd love to hear from you, like what skills or ideas come to mind, what questions come to mind, and what questions you might have around devices, social media, and AI use. I know that I know that some people had earlier shared some questions. Would love to hear if there's any other questions about what we think social media and AI literacy should encapsulate, or the kinds of skills that you think children need to develop. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Wendy. She said that students cried when they had them turn in their Chromebooks at the end of the school year. All right, I'll just, I don't know if I should give it a minute or just go and show some of the questions that I have just to show examples. 3, 2, 1. Ah! So here are just some action and skill-based questions that I had thought of in terms of skills or ideas that came to mind. How do you know whether something online is true or trustworthy? How do algorithms influence what we see and how we think? When is AI helping us think, and when is it thinking for us? What do posts say about you and who gets to see them? What settings and features can help you stay safe and in control? That's an interesting one because in a parent workshop, we had asked parents in one group to share some advice and tips for effective strategies to helping, raise children with smartphones and technology. And in another poster, we asked them to write some things that don't work. And for both of those posters, they actually wrote the parent controls apps. They were saying that, and by the end of the conversation, they had decided that the technology companies had made it difficult on purpose, but there was something like a school feature where if a kid wanted to access the internet to do a school assignment, they had to get permission from their parent to access like a video on YouTube or whatever it was. And so there was a point of friction between the child and the parent because the child wanted to do their assignment and the mom wasn't responding right away. And so it's interesting how we're, like, how do we navigate that? How can you communicate online in ways that protect your feelings and others? How does behavior or language shift depending on the platform or group? And how do you recognize problems online and what steps can you take? So, in the face of engagement tech, students need skills. And the first thing they need to be able to do is recognize their impulses and habits. Notice when and why we reach for our phones. We have to learn to make intentional choices once we have that self awareness, whether we pause before posting, scrolling, or reacting, and really thinking about our purpose with it. Then it comes to managing algorithms and settings, which continue to evolve. And how do we take control of things like our notification, our privacy, our data collection, and screen time? And then prioritizing in person relationships. We have to rebuild the habits that screens have replaced. Building empathy and communication, practicing being kind and authentic, both online and offline. These are the same social emotional skills you already teach, just applying it to a digital context. So I'm gonna try to do this activity with a poll. I don't know how successful I will be. Um, would love to actually, you know what? Would love to just see you type. I love to see you type yes or no, if you use your phone before bed. And if you type in yes, say what you're doing if you don't mind. What are we doing on our phones before bed? Scrolling social media, Facebook. I was on I was on Facebook Marketplace when that came out. It's really nice, like the community, free, the free exchange stuff. Playing games, checking news. Oh, reading on Kindle. There's a debate. Is Kindle, like looking at reading on Kindle before bed, is it good or bad? Does it count? Just to check it. Messages from work. Oh man, Scott, you work too much. Checking alarm. Yeah, I have to like triple check an alarm. I'm always scared I'm not going to wake up. Oh, New York Times games. Oh my God, I heard there are people who literally just use the New York Times for the crossword and the games. Does it count if you're reading a book? I don't know. It's the question of our times. All right. Yes or no? You felt stressed or distracted by notifications. Feel free to share what the notifications were. Marla says her daughter is completing essays for scholarships. She's not even allowed to use the internet thesaurus or anything. Not a thesaurus. She had discussion with her teachers and other teachers for grammar issues and flow. That's super cool. I remember back in the day when it was like the transition between, cursive or like every other writing on lined paper or typing your paper. At the time, we chose the paper because you get to write less than if you type. Um, and when we would like write a first draft and we would swap it with a peer who would then like do the proofreading and then you'd go and do another revision and then you'd swap again with somebody else. She needs to maintain authenticity and honesty since there are interviews if her essays are chosen for consideration. That's awesome. Oh, yep. Spam is definitely stressful. Phone calls. Oh my God, these days they're really good at scamming. Oh, most are off. No, yeah, numb to notifications. They're very distracting. I can ignore them. I found my dad was on YouTube and he was getting notifications. He was getting like over 1,000 per week. I don't understand how that man is functioning. Um, Yes or no? You have used AI to help with work. Feel free to share details or not. I think that, you know, we're in a room of education leaders, and I trust that you are using AI ethically and responsibly and not asking it to help you respond to a nasty email from people. I'm just kidding. I have had to do that because, sometimes what I want to say doesn't come out the best way. Oh, helping write letters to parents in a more formal tone. Marlon, yes. Prevent me from saying something I may regret. If only it was there when we were dating, and before we like send a message or have a conversation when we're a little upset at our partners or our children. Maybe I should start AIing before I have a talk with my almost 7 year old. All right. You stayed up late scrolling or playing games. Yes or no? Why? Oh, some other cool things. Using a thinking partner to check if perspective is valid. Yeah, I like to check my logic flow sometimes. Finding sources for reading, mostly reading late. Yeah. I played Candy Crush, um, and then they turned it into social media. I never cared to know who else was playing Candy Crush. I just wanted to be crushing it. And now I want to crush it less on Candy Crush. Formulating and editing emails, solitaire. Yes, not all the time. All right. And then just the last one, you laughed or felt good from something online. Candy Crush recovery. And Marie, I was in like the 900s, and I haven't touched it since. I think it's I don't know how many levels they have now. Um, I would say I like to end on this one because generally we've all kind of had this experience from seeing something funny online or someone sent us a funny video, or maybe like a funny tweet. To show that like we're all in this space and it can be good and bad. The actual experience, if you do this activity in a room full of anyone, honestly, and you get to go from one side to the other, it's a good visual representation and it shows how we're all kind of struggling with this problem, regardless of, age. And it's, again, just an important way to reflect and come together and really think about what are the good and bad ways in which we can use technology and our experiences. Dog videos. Yeah, my mom watches dog videos all the time and she shares them with me. My mom also got a dog, and I now feel like a middle child. I was once her youngest. So, reflecting back at your answers, I'd love to, either hear from you in the chat, or if you just want to think about it to yourself, like what patterns did you notice about how you use devices and how they affect your daily life? And which of your habits feel like choices you are making and which feel harder to control? That second question always kind of gets me because I feel like no matter what I'm using on my phone, it has felt over time like less of a choice. And then how do your online behaviors and experiences connect to your own relationships, identity, and how you see yourself? And so after this moment of reflection, after we get to build some self-awareness, and so those like simple prompts just make you think about parts of your day that perhaps you weren't focusing on so much of. Maybe you weren't thinking about every night your bedtime routine and what you were doing. Was it pushing back the amount of sleep that you got? Does it actually help you sleep? Was it actually helping you, feel a little bit relieved and unwinding from the hectic day? Or maybe it would have been better to do that, a couple hours before bed. And so by recognizing and building some self-awareness, we can really start to question, how do these devices impact our relationships? Because especially if we're living in a household with other people, are there is it is a substitution of what you would be doing in its absence? Yeah, harder to put the phone down when the news is stressful, which seems to be daily now. I agree. It's hard. It's one of those things where um, this isn't, I think a lot of people, is like two options to either tune it out or tune in. But like when you tune in, you're informed, but at the same time, it can be very difficult to cope with everything that's going on these days. I remember someone was saying to be, to give yourself a lot of grace and be gentle with yourself, understanding that all of us now, especially those in education, you're going in with a lot more than you had to before going into the classroom, understanding all of the invisible baggage that we carry of understanding the world that is out there for our students or our children. And then lastly, I'd love for you to think about how you can take action. If you wanted to make a change in how you use devices, what would be one small step you could take? I see from Rhonda, she deleted game apps because they were a distraction, and now she's able to read more in the evening. I also recently had to delete Instagram. It was a problem. Um, yeah, maintaining discipline with the phone. I also try to keep my phone at certain times of the day in just like an entirely different room. So, what would be the ideal interface for social media literacy as we move on? It should be collaborative, inquiry based, asking lots of questions, and learning that builds curiosity, relationships, and retention of this learning. When learning happens mostly on screens, students become isolated and passive. And so the interface matters. When students learn through conversation, curiosity grows. Simply because they're learning about technology does not mean they need to learn it on the technology. And when they learn through screens, comparison grows. So our goal is to restore connection as a condition for learning. Everyone needs social media literacy, and everyone needs to support students and work together, as we saw with the activity. We're all kind of grappling with our own device use and just the number of devices that we have. When we had engaged in discovery with a lot of students, parents, and educators, accessibility was a huge concern. They said kids have too much access to things online, and then also, too many people have access to children when they have a device. And therefore, there's no breaks. Bullying was a common example that was brought up. Was there's a lot of bullying going on, and back in the day, when you left school, you had a bit of a respite from the bullying, but now it carries over, or sometimes it spreads and it's amplified by those online spaces. Then when I was talking to educators and parents, what I also found was that the parents don't like the accessibility. Teachers, school leaders, when school used to end, it was over. But now you also have to be constantly by a device in case something happens in school outside of school hours. And so there's no end to the day, the workday. So everyone requires the support, and we have to work together. Students can't do this alone. We need parents, schools, communities to create shared language and knowledge about technology that is relevant for every community. And by asking questions, that can do a lot of help. I like the Spider-Man graphic because I was thinking about how there's so much blame being assigned between the three stakeholders who care the most about a child's outcome and are invested. So as we try to navigate how we will educate and consider use of social media and AI tools, talk and think in systems. Because again, it's built by systems. And so we must use systems thinking for real systems change. Shared understanding, norms, and values will make real change possible, but only by engaging with stakeholders. I think some of the most creative, innovative approaches that I saw that I also experienced in the classroom in a different way was with rule creation. When we look at school policies, oftentimes children agree that with the policies, but they weren't given a seat at the table. So even if the policy exists, it's still not a bad idea to get groups like student advisory groups to come together and to think and shape the policy for the school in the future in a robust kind of way where they're also going to be with, educators or have someone facilitating and see where they land. My example was when I had created rules with my middle school team. I'd come in and I was with a bunch of tenured teachers, and they're like, we're going to have 5 rules and we're all going to follow these 5 rules, no more. And they were great. I had gone to a session with a gifted coordinator, and it was all about inquiry based learning. And she would tell us, like, you know what, try having the kids come up with the rules and see what happens. So I went in on another year of teaching and I told the kids to come up with the rules. They had so many rules. And you know that the kids that come up with the best rules and the most detailed rules, there's a reason they're familiar with it, but it still gets more buy-ins and then also gets better enforcement from the peers because it was co-created. So students need guidance and safe open spaces to talk about tech and talk frequently at home and at school. Lastly, here are some suggested readings for you for more ideas. If you want a deep digger, each shows like a similar message in different ways with kids growing up faster online and with less support. And we can change that. We can help them pause, think, and choose differently. And each explains the problem from a different angle that is worth exploring so that we get to the conclusion of tech is not a tool, it is a toy, and we need to find ways of slowly adopting as is developmentally appropriate and not waiting to be the experiment in which researchers can be like, oh, this wasn't good for the kids, whereas we are proactively creating the guardrails so that we don't exacerbate the inequities and issues that we've seen from social media and smartphones and avoid over reliance and dependency. Thank you so much for attending the session. It wasn't about banning tech. It's definitely about teaching students to think before they scroll. You have the skills to lead this. And thank you very much for helping both staff and students, reconnect with others and with themselves. You are on the front lines of this issue and you have the power to shift it because this generation doesn't need just less screen time. They actually need more guidance, connection, and understanding. And that's going to start with us. So thanks for spending this time together. If you'd like a copy of the slides, I'm happy to share it with you. Or if you want to bring this work to your school, I would be happy to help. And feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. I hope that we met our goals and that you learned something and that you won't have residual trauma from a terrible webinar.
Absolutely not, Jane. That was fantastic. Not showing us how to not just survive with these technologies, but how to thrive as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us this afternoon.
Okay. I don't know if I should keep that last slide up for people who would like to give me feedback.
You certainly can. And if you want to send me your slides, Jane, I will include them in tomorrow's email with the recording.
Okay, awesome. Will do.
Yep, just send me the link and I'll include that in the email.
Okay.
Lots of great thank yous and great jobs coming into the chat right now. So make sure to check those out.
It's so quiet. I was scared. I was like, oh my God,
I
I'm just
know.
making really bad jokes that fall flat. Feels like The Office.
I know it's so good to integrate humor, but it's hard when you can't hear the laughter, and you've got to just hope that the jokes are landing out there. Yeah, so you did a great job. So there's Jane's email address. You can schedule a virtual meeting with the QR code using your phone to scan that. Um, and Sue
Thanks.
says the jokes were great.
Thanks, Keith. He actually came. Ah, thanks, Sue. I really appreciate it. Next time I'm going to put Sue on the phone with me and have her on speaker so that she can laugh so I can know whether my jokes need to be cut.
Oh no, keep them in. Keep them in.
I'm also like,
The levity with this kind of subject matter is much appreciated.
yeah, there was another book I wanted to share, but I couldn't find it. But someone has a book and uh it's a new book coming out about I think it's like a good follow-up for Anxious Generation.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, but if I can find it, I was like trying to hunt for it. I don't even know if the book is released yet.
Oh wow, that sounds awesome. So yes, lots of good comments coming in for you in the chat, Jane. If anybody has any questions, we've got a couple minutes before I'm going to close the room. So if anybody has any questions for Jane about social media, about artificial intelligence, feel free to type those into the chat. We'll make sure we get everybody addressed here before we log out. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we will record this session. I'll be sending out the recording link tomorrow with the webinar evaluation for you to complete. Give us your feedback. Let us know what you thought of the presentation. How can we do a better job and make things even better next time around? So please fill out that webinar evaluation. And then our Illinois participants will get the ISB evidence of completion form for entering your 1 PD clock hour. As long as you stay the whole time, I will be checking those logs to make sure everybody was logged in for the whole time.
And so the I was thinking like so the timing begins now, the countdown where it's like the post Thanksgiving highs, and now it's like the just hopefully it carries over all the way until winter break.
Right, absolutely. All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. Jane, is there anything there I missed?
Not at all. Great to meet everyone. Although I didn't really get to meet everyone, it was crazy to try and read the chat and then also present. I was yeah, multitasking, not
Yeah.
a strength of mine.
No, you did a great job of keeping that balance, and it's always nice to have chat engagement so that the participants feel like they can, kind of have a two-way dialogue with you, even though their mics are muted.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording.